Morning everyone, and thank you for joining us again for the second of our webinar series. And today we'll be covering writing your CV, job applications, as well as some information on personal brand and supporting your well-being. So for those of you that couldn't make the last webinar, I'm Gemma, Head of Wellbeing at Next Steps Consulting, and we're also joined today by Ange and Debs, two of our senior consultants. We will be filming this webinar, and I have noticed you've put yourselves on mute and not got your videos on, so thank you for that. There will be opportunities, as there was last time, midway through and at the end for any questions that you might have. And there is also the chat function, so please do use this if you've got any comments, questions or reflections throughout. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just a quick reminder again of the support that you'll receive over the next couple of months. Hopefully you'll all have had a chance to look at the online portal, which has got lots of information and templates for you to work through. Second webinars today. The final webinar will be on the 25th of August at 10 AM on preparing for your interview. And as always, there's the unlimited email support that the team will provide. So if there's anything you need any help with, please just let us know on support@nextstepsconsulting.co.uk. So the content that we'll be covering today is based on the information that's on the portal under building your brand and CV and job applications and cover letters. So please do have a look at the online portal, as there's lots more information that we won't be able to cover today, as well as lots of templates that you can use for your CV and cover letters, and lots of other exercises and information for you. So in terms of what we're going to be covering today, we'll do a quick recap of the homework that was set at the end of the last webinar. We'll then talk through your personal brand and why that's important, how to write your CV, building an effective CV, as well as what you should include and the two different types of CVs that you might use. We'll then go through how to approach job applications and our tips for completing these, when and where you might use cover letters, what to think about when considering your social media presence, and then how to support your mental health whilst you're job searching, as well as some takeaway learnings and homework and next steps before the next webinar. So I'll now pass on to Debs, who will take us through the next bit of the webinar.
Good morning, people. Just like to take some time to read this quote from Walt Disney. Like you to think about when you are or were at your best, and how did that make you feel? Like you to think about how you felt when you did the job right, and think about what working hard means to you. What does it look like? How does it feel? And think about the best job you ever had and why was it so good? Next slide. Does anybody have any questions from the last webinar or any reflections on the homework that was set at all? Okay, let's quickly go through the homework from webinar 1. We talked about reviewing and completing the alignment model, my wants and needs and my offer. And as part of this, you were going to ask yourself and others, when you were at your best, what was the environment and what was around you when you were operating at that level? You were asked to do some research about possible sectors and roles that you would be interested in. And related to this, you were going to take a role and work through what that sector's wants and needs were from the role advertised. How does that align to your wants and needs? What was the percentage fit? Were there any gaps? And how could you mitigate and fill those gaps? And you were asked to practice using the alignment model. Did any of you manage to address any of the bullet points from the last webinar session? Does anybody want to comment on this at this point? Okay, let's move on. Just going to do an overview of the alignment model. You'll recall that we emphasise the importance of using the alignment model and how you can use this at various stages in your career. We paid particular attention to how it could support and inform job search activities and going out to the market and creating a strong CV. By completing the alignment model template, it'll help you construct a CV that plays to your preferences, the wants and needs you detailed in quadrant 1, and your strengths and offering, your USP, that you detailed in quadrant 2. It's the first stage of really being comfortable and confident about what you're putting down in your CV, because it focuses your offer and what you want from the role. When we're confident about our CV, we can talk to it. It provides examples of when we did great things, like Walt Disney said, having confidence in your ability. Angie's going to talk through about building your brand and finding your USP and areas that impacts on.
Thanks, Debs. Good morning, everybody. Ooh. Okay, so you may have thought about the USP of Crohn's and colitis or other companies that you've worked for, but have you ever thought about your USP, what it is that makes you unique? What makes you that person that someone will want to have on their team? As Deb said, the first place to start thinking about this is in your offer from the alignment model. What is it that you bring? If it helps, think of yourself as a product, maybe like a can of Coke. What is it about that can of Coke that makes you want to buy it? Think of yourself in terms of a product, and what might it be that that person that's looking at your CV or your application form, what will they see that they want? Depending on the role or the organisation that you're applying for, you might need to tweak your brand to match quadrant 3. So what is it that that company wants from you and from the role itself? The underlying core essence of your brand and you won't change, but you may need to tweak it. Like Deb said with the CV, you have to feel really comfortable with your brand, and it will be very personal to you. It needs to come across not only in your CV, but also your elevator pitch, your social media presence, LinkedIn, and your network. For example, if you ask somebody to read your CV, ask them what messages does it leave them with about you. If they're not the ones that you need to get across, you'll need to tweak it until it does. And you need to do that for all of these elements to make sure that your brand's consistent. Debs is going to go through your CV in more detail later, but the real essence of your brand should come over in the profile summary section at the beginning of your CV. Once you've done that, that will also help form the basis of your elevator pitch. We don't have time now to cover network and how you might use it today, but there's lots of information on the portal. So please do have a look at the network section and then get in touch with us if you have any questions.
Thanks, Ange. Okay, let's just talk through what makes an effective CV. Let's go through some of the headlines of your CV. So you will have a title. You don't need to have CV as a title. It'll be obvious to the reader that it is a CV. You'll have a personal statement and a profile, and this personal statement, as Ange reflected, is the opportunity to personalise your CV, and this is going to inform your 30-second elevator pitch. There'll be more to follow on that later. The length, a good CV is no more than 3 pages long, ideally shorter, and that will involve quite a bit of practice and redrafting of CVs as we go through that process. Presentation. Make it electronic, avoid bright or crazy fonts, and use the same style throughout. There's no need for photos. That's in American CVs do tend to have these, but European CVs, the custom and practice is we don't tend to use personal photos. Personal details. Make sure that your details are clear and at the beginning, so employers don't have to search through your CV to find contact details. also ensure that you use a professional email address. Work experience include dates and months and years of when you started and finished a job. Jobs should be listed in the most present at the top, and make sure that you include your skills that you've demonstrated as well as your responsibilities. You don't necessarily have to include reasons for why you left a job, but you'll need to prepare an answer if asked, either online or at interview. Education, include all types of qualifications and details, e.g. the subjects and grades where possible. You don't need to include your primary school level. Volunteering, it counts. If you have volunteered, make sure that you put that in your CV, include the skills you developed and the duties that you had. References, you don't always have to list references on your CV, but make sure you have the contact details of a couple ready to use when you're asked for them. Don't use relatives as referees. Check, check, check again. Grammar and spelling is really important, so read your CV a few times to make sure there are no mistakes, and get someone else to read it too. Personal interests, you can put these at the end, but only include these interests if they're suitable for suitable employers to read. Next slide. Different types of CV. There are two main types of CV. There's a functional CV, which is used to show specific transferable skills and attributes. It's not normally aligned to a particular role, but normally is used to highlight transferable skills when applying to a sector you haven't worked in before. A general CV, this is your standard CV and your working document. It's not biased in any way to a particular job or role or employer. You'll have used the alignment model to inform it. It's the one that you use as a starting point for any application. What I mean by this is if you saw a job that you were interested in, you'd use the alignment model to determine what the organisation's wants and needs are, and you'll do some due diligence, some reading up on the organisation, review the job outline and the person's spec, and find out more about the job if you can, and you'll use that to inform and tailor your CV accordingly. For both CVs, you should think about the culture and any bias or assumptions from the sector that you have worked in and what potential recruiters might think about your employer. For example, think about what employers from outside the charity sector might think about workers from within the charity sector, and try and address that in your CV. Next slide. Some subheadings for your CV. Ensure that you've got a clear statement around your personal profile in particular. This is going to inform your 30-second elevator pitch. I'd like to focus on organisation. This section describes the organisation that you work in, either currently or your latest or last organisation. Think about, a good exercise that I've used with my clients is to think about, if you had to describe your organisation without actually putting a name to it, how would you describe it? How would you describe what it does? For example, think about what the turnover is. Think about how many staff are employed. Think about who its customers and clients are, and include that in your organisation description. Thinking about your job title and dates, making sure that they're relevant and up to date. You don't need to put precise dates in there, so it doesn't need to be that, it can just be generally the date, the month and the year. Role responsibilities, a short summary of what your role was in relevant organisations as you work through your CV. Focus on your key achievements. Ideally list these from your last role or your current role. A good tip is to go back over your appraisal or your performance review documents and pull out what you did, what you were rewarded for, what you did great. You can list up to key achievements from other jobs, but I would advise only going back at most 10 years, as you want to keep them relevant to the audience that's looking at your CV. CPD, training, and development, think about what you've attended, whether they have been in-house courses, external courses, or online training. Include the year that they were completed. Next slide. So here is an example CV. You can see this example CV on the resources website, but it gives you some idea of the format and the content of a CV. So please go onto the website, please review it, because it's covered what we've basically been talking about for the CV format and construction. Next slide. Just been talking about outlining your achievements, and this is really important for us to focus on this, both for our CV, but it also helps us for the next stage of when we're in interview mode. You can do this by referring to the alignment model. Pull out your particular achievements and create a bullet point or short paragraph detailing what you did, why you did it, and what was the outcome or impact of that achievement. For an example, you might have reviewed an invoicing process, identified a particular issue, put a proposal forward to your line manager of an improvement recommendation. This was accepted, implemented, and it saved the organisation time, process, or was more efficient. So it's really just encompassing in a couple of sentences the importance of that achievement and the impact that it had. Include numbers, figures and volumes if you can. That's always helpful and relevant for the reader to understand the impact. And remember that depending on your role you're applying for, you may have to emphasise and highlight and reprioritise the different achievements so that you create a headline or a list of importance of achievements geared towards a particular job that you're applying for. Next slide.
So I mentioned earlier that you might need to tweak your brand according to the role and organisation you're applying for, but you definitely will need to amend your CV according to these things. And Deb just touched on that earlier in terms of the focus of your achievements. So as Deb said, it's best to have a generic CV, and then you need to amend that dependent on the job. When you've been through quadrant 3 of the alignment model, what do they want and need, and consider your offer, ask which are the elements that you really need to pull out and ensure that they are aware of in your offer on your CV. You may alter the focus on certain skills or achievements to get this across. If there are areas that you don't have experience or skills in, think about, is there a way that you could demonstrate any transferable skills that would show that although you don't have that, you would be able to develop it? If not, even things like saying you can learn things quite quickly or you're flexible in your approach to new things, any way that you can show them that you're mitigating a gap between what it is that you offer and what it is that they want. Again, ask somebody else to read your CV through. What messages does it leave with them? Are they the right ones for you, but are they also the right ones for this organisation and this role?
Okay, Gemma mentioned at the start of this webinar that there'll be an opportunity midway through for you to ask any questions around CVs. So are there any questions from the group on writing a CV? That's fine. What I'd like to do is just explore with you some of the questions that we tend to get asked, and so I'm going to ask Ange some questions and see what her reflections are. I get asked, Ange, from clients, what personal details should they put on their CV?
Nowadays, Debs, it's really quite limited in what we suggest that people put on their CV. All that an employer is really looking for is your name, an email and a contact telephone number, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's really useful to keep it short and to the point. Another question is, should I put everything I've done down on my CV?
Not unless it's relevant to the actual job that you're applying for and it's selling you for that job. So if we think about 3 pages maximum, you might need to use an early career summary to group up the work that you did at the beginning of your career if you end up going over the 3 pages. But like we've said all the way throughout, make sure that you're pulling out the specifics that are really relevant to the job you're applying for. So in summary, no, you don't need to put everything down unless it's all relevant to the role that you're applying for.
Okay. Another question I get asked is, a few people have reviewed my CV and have given me all different advice and feedback. What should I do?
Yeah, so just to say that's a really normal response because a CV is a really personal document. But at the end of the day, you need to be comfortable with it. There are some hygiene factors, and Debs, you took us through those earlier in terms of these are the things that have to be on your CV. But again, at the end of the day, that CV is getting across your brand. When you get to interview, you need to be really comfortable with it and know it inside out and be able to rely on it so that you feel confident going to that interview. Again, asking yourself those questions. Does it leave with the messages that I want it to leave? And if it does, then that's what's right for you. Yes, take on other people's advice, consider it, but it's got to be right for you at the end of the day.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Ange.
So I'm just going to talk now about the 30-second elevator pitch. You'll have heard the phrase, you only have one chance to make a first impression. And that is really true, but there's a lot of hard work and practice that needs to go into making it a favourable first impression when we're on a job search. And we need to make sure that it's very succinct and focused. So in preparation for your first meetings, whether that's with a recruiter, a member of your network, or the first stage of interview, you need to think about your elevator pitch. This is the real essence of your brand, and it should come out in the profile summary section of your CV and in your elevator pitch. So if you've already done a lot of work on your CV and then you've moved to doing the profile section, that profile section is the basis of your elevator pitch, and making sure that it covers the questions on the slide. So your name, what are your key strengths, what's the most recent position or role, and why are you on the job market? A recent achievement of which you're proud, your key responsibilities and accountabilities, and what you want to do next. So when we're thinking about why you're looking for a new role or why you're applying for this role, when you're talking with a recruiter, you need to have a positive spin on why you're out in the job market. Just saying that you've been made redundant and needing a new job isn't going to cut it. So practice saying why you're on the job market and why you're looking for a new role in this particular sector or organisation. Practice saying your elevator pitch out loud, alone at first, but then to someone else. Does it flow? Does it feel comfortable? And like I said with your CV, does this leave the messages about you and your brand that you want it to? Remember, if you try and come across as someone you're not, it will show. You need to be authentic. If you are, not only will that radiate through, but if you're authentic and you feel comfortable with what it is that you're saying, your CV, your brand, your elevator pitch, you'll come across as much more confident, and that's more likely to get you the role that you want. Your elevator pitch is very succinct and focused, but you also need to be able to drill down in these areas. So ask yourself, how prepared are you to answer these points? You will need to go into more detail with these, either when you're talking to a recruiter or when you get to interview stage. Most of the answers to this can come from your alignment and CV work. So think about, can you describe your key strengths and areas of expertise? If somebody asks you to demonstrate that through, what's your effectiveness at being able to improve processes, use the achievements that you've put down in your CV to be able to show that. Also, I mentioned earlier about positively and confidently outlining your current situation. You don't need to sort of hide away from some of the facts, but how do you turn that into a positive story about where you are today and where you're moving forward and what it is that you want from the future? Why do you want to be part of this organisation? You need to really sell that you want this role. I'm now going to hand over to Gemma.
Thank you. So social media is a huge part of everyone's lives now, and the majority of individuals will be at least on one social media platform, if not more. And according to the Career Build survey, 70% of employers use social media to screen candidates during the hiring process. And about half of employers said they wouldn't call a person if they couldn't find them online. However, employers aren't screening for reasons not to hire individuals. More often than not, it's to support information that candidates are qualified for the job and ensuring that a candidate has a professional persona. So whilst employers aren't searching for anything negative, in just over half of cases, employers did find something that led them not to hire an individual. And some of the areas that you need to be careful of that might leave employers with a bad impression are inappropriate or provocative photos, videos, or information. Any sort of information about candidates drinking or taking drugs. If there's any evidence that candidates have lied about their qualifications. Poor communication skills. So again, Deb's talked about, poor grammar. Make sure you check on your grammar, particularly on LinkedIn, make sure you check all your spelling and check that your sentences flow. Another thing that potential employers really don't like is that if you've bad-mouthed previous employers. So again, even if you have had a bad experience in a previous job, make sure you don't put anything on social media. And finally, an unprofessional screen name. So just make sure that you use your name in all of your social media profiles. But the good thing is that employers are using it in a positive way. So be true to yourself. Think about how you want to be represented. Be authentic, be you. Portray the image that you want future employers to see and use it to your advantage by having a really impressive profile that's going to impress potential employers when they look at you. Now, in terms of LinkedIn, LinkedIn's got 27 million users and it's the largest professional network in the world. And it's a really great opportunity to get your name in front of recruiters, organisations and professionals. And it is important that alongside the work you're doing on your CV, you also spend time on your LinkedIn profile and make it as strong and as appealing as you can to organisations and potential recruiters. So LinkedIn is all about connecting people. And the key is to put together a profile that will prompt conversation, that will encourage people to look at your profile and will distinguish you from the crowd. So we're not going to go through hints and tips today, but we've got loads of information on the portal about things you need to think about with regards to your LinkedIn profile. So please do have a look through those. And if you've got any questions or if you need any help in terms of how you structure your LinkedIn profile or what you should put on there, please do get in touch. And over to Debs now.
Okay, thank you, Gemma. Let's look now at application forms and cover letters, what they are and their uses. So application forms are used by employers to help with long listing, short listing. They enable a consistent format for considering applications against a person spec, and they are used for consistency, diversity and equality purposes. The employer's job description and person spec, these are key for identifying what their wants and needs are. Again, I know we keep referring back to the alignment model, but it really is useful. And to assess whether this matches with your offer. So an application form will go through a various sets of hidden questions which are trying to tease out matches from you to the organisation. Ensure that you fill your application form correctly, spell check it. Don't just upload your CV. Use the CV to inform the application form, as you can always cut and paste from your CV when you're completing your application form. It's particularly important with the volume of applications that employers are seeing at the moment in the jobs market that yours stands out. And this will be accomplished by a great CV. that is going to address the questions posed by the application form and its format. Cover letters. These are the different uses for cover letters. They can be sent with speculative applications or used for targeted applications. You can use in an email content. You don't need to append a separate document, which is a cover letter. It's your introduction. Again, it's your 30-second elevator pitch in writing with a little bit more detail in there, drawing your employees' attention to your key achievements and your interest in the role and the organisation. You can review all the templates on our resources website in relation to the cover letters.
So we all know that job searching can be an emotional roller coaster as well as hugely time consuming. And it's important to ensure that you look after your mental health to enable you to be in the best possible frame of mind for your job search. And we've just outlined a couple of tips to support your mental health whilst job searching. So it can be tempting just to apply for every role that you see without really understanding if you might be the right fit for the role and if the role is right for you. And just by applying for loads of jobs can take lots of time and energy. So focus on the sort of role that you want and the type of organisation that you want to work for, and put your effort into a smaller number of targeted applications. Planning is key to your job search and identifying what you want to achieve each week. So for example, I want to apply for 3 jobs this week. This can help to ensure that you maintain momentum and that you also feel a sense of achievement when you've completed your tasks. It's also important to remember that it might take a while to find a new role. And so when you're planning your tasks, ensure that they're realistic and achievable within the time frame that you've set. And don't be disappointed if you don't get a job within the next couple of weeks. It is a process that can take a significant amount of time. And treat job searching like a job and create a structure to yourself. So think about when you work best during the day and use this time for your job searching, but try to keep to a routine as much as possible by working the same times each day, ensuring that you're having breaks, and trying not to let your job search take up, every hour of the day. Keep to set hours as much as possible and ensure you do give yourself time to switch off and do things that you enjoy to allow yourself to relax and recharge your batteries. If you are struggling, reach out for help, speak to friends, family or colleagues, or reach out to us at Next Steps. These people can look through your applications or help you with interview practice, or can just be someone to talk to when you're finding it really difficult. We also encourage people to get feedback wherever you can, either with regards to your application form or after you've had an interview if you weren't successful, and try to get this as specific as possible from the organisation that you applied for. This will really help with your preparation for future application forms or for future interviews. And also when you get some positive feedback, it does help boost your confidence as well for your job search. We all know how difficult it can be when you don't get a job that you really want. And again, it's important to remember that sometimes even the best applicants don't get jobs. And if you don't get a role, try to think of it more as a misalignment to your skills and experience and what the organisation wants, and that it's not down to you as a person and your skills and your capability. Finally, there's lots that's out of our control when we're searching for a job, such as who the interview panel are or exactly what a company is looking for. And all too often we focus on these areas that are outside our control. So what we'd encourage you to do is place your time and energy on those areas which you can control, such as the quality of your applications, the research that you do on an organisation before you have an interview, and the preparation that you do at all stages of your job search. So try to focus on those areas that you can control as much as possible. So it's always helpful sometimes to look at the change curve and understand that, sorry, someone's just coming back in. Change will always be a part of our lives, and so understanding the impact that change has on our well-being can be helpful when it comes to processing our emotions and behaviours. Change can be really, really unsettling. Sometimes it can be exciting, but it will always generate an emotional response. And the key is to understand how we manage ourselves through change and how we bounce back to become more resilient in the future. So we all process change differently in terms of the speed in which we accept change and the impact that it has on us. And that's why the change curve can really help us make sense of our feelings and our emotions. And it's a useful reminder that actually when we are feeling shocked or angry or frustrated, that is a real natural reaction to the change that we're going through. When we are going through change, it's good to notice the different stages, and particularly that denial and frustration. And this will cause feelings of fear about uncertainty, what we're facing in the future. We might be really angry about what's happened or sad about what we're losing. However, we will all come through change, and we will start to accept the change that we're going through. And then when we have come through it, we then start to look forward to the new challenges or the positives that are going to come through the change. So think about where you are currently on the change curve and what's helped you move through change before. There can be many things that help us move through change, and by reflecting and recognizing when we have come through difficult times before and how you overcome these can help us be better prepared for when we face challenges again in the future. Thanks, Ange.
Thanks, Jen. Let's just start to conclude and think about closing down the webinar now. Some takeaway learnings. Keep working on the alignment model, as this is going to inform and support and build confidence in going out to the jobs market. We've covered building your brand and your USP, and you have access to the resources to build up your CV. So we would like to see your drafts as soon as you're comfortable to share those. You have an overview of social media presence and its uses in the jobs market. Again, we'd like to see your feedback from this regarding potential LinkedIn profiles. Reflect on how you're feeling and support your mental health, particularly focusing on what Gemma has just talked about on the change curve. Next slide. Homework and next steps. Let's go through what you can do following this session. Using the alignment model, review your CV and redraft accordingly. Log into the resources website and review details for your 30-second elevator pitch and put your thoughts and drafts down on paper. Regarding LinkedIn, if you have a profile, review it and update it. If you haven't, have a look at LinkedIn and thinking about joining. It's free. Talk to colleagues and friends who've used LinkedIn for their view. Important, we are here to support and help you. So forward your draft CVs, forward your 30-second elevator pitches for us to comment on. Normally we'll be expecting to work with you on several drafts of that CV as part of your job search activities. So don't feel that it's just one exercise and one chance to get feedback. It's going to be a process of working through various drafts of your CV. So please do get in touch. Again, if you've got any questions, get in touch and we'll respond. Finally, we'd like to end on a quote from Dame Tanny Gray Thompson. And I think the key messages from this are: have a focus, have a plan, have some direction, know where you're going, and put in the hard work. This links into the Walt Disney quote that we talked about at the very start of the webinar. Thank you. There's now an opportunity for questions. We'll stay online for the next 30 minutes if anyone would like to talk to us about anything from the webinars or anything else related to support we can give you or the online portal. So please do stay in touch. We're here if you want to talk to us. Thank you.